mode. And what it is that Microsoft in their infinite wisdom decided that power management was something that they wanted to have included on a server operating system.
Doesn't make any sense.
Why they did that, I have no idea. We want to turn it off on our virtual machines because what happens is if the operating system turns off your monitor in a virtual machine, it can actually cause an issue where that virtual machine has shut off the monitor, but you can't actually reactivate the monitor. And it basically has the machine, what I like to call a coma state. So just click on the desktop, go to display settings. Oops, I didn't want that. I wanted personalize. Sorry.
Not this one.
No, well, it's normally I went to display settings and I was able to get where I wanted to go. Okay. Oh, that's just weird. It's giving me, we're going to do a search for power. Do we want to change our power settings? PowerShell.
Power and sleep settings.
Yeah, we want power and sleep settings.
And then just we never.
Well, we want to do two different things. So we want to do screen, make sure that the screen never turns off. We also want to go into additional power settings, high performance, change plan settings, and never turn off the display and save changes. That will save you a lot of headaches when working with your virtual machines, especially on this lab where we're going to be jumping back and forth between Mars and Vulkan quite a bit. And sometimes we'll be spending 10 or 15 minutes on Mars, and then we go back to Vulkan, and then we come back to Mars after 10 or 15 minutes. And if it happens to turn off the screen while you're gone, sometimes getting back in forces you to actually have to reboot the server if it goes into that weird coma state. So this just helps prevent you getting into that problem, which is really helpful. That one did it right. Well, that's really weird. The domain controller didn't bring up the power and sleep, but the that was interesting. Wow. Okay, so we got that up, and then we need to get Vulkan up. There we go. Okay. Okay, so we got a command prompt over there. We got a, and we'll get a PowerShell prompt, elevated PowerShell prompt over here. Make sure it's an elevated PowerShell prompt.
Yeah, one as administrator.
Yep. Okay, so then get our lab doc here, and okay, so what we're going to do, first thing we want to do is make sure that we can talk to our domain controller. We aren't going to be able to do that initially because when we set up our Linux box, we were not using the domain as a DNS. So the first thing you have to do on this lab is we're going to flip it so that we actually are pointing to the domain controller. So on Vulkan, we need to go into our network settings. And we're going to go into our wired, go in and change those. Now we want to go to network. And we want to go to configure. And we want to go into IPv4. And so what we need to do is we need to change what our DNS is. Because right now, when we first set up Vulkan, we needed to register it to the outside world. And because we were registering it to the outside world, we had Vulkan pointing to 10.1.1.20 and 10.1.1.22. So that way Vulkan is able to go out there, talk to the Red Hat server through our gateway server, get registered, and get everything happy. Now that we've been in that state, we're going to add Vulkan to our Active Directory environment. So we need to change where its DNS is pointing. So it's no longer pointing external. It's going to point internal to our domain controller. So we're going to switch that to 192.168.79, and numlock has to be on 100. So we're pointing it to our domain controller. So now that we're pointing that, and for those of you Kevin, you were having problems getting yours registered. Where is Vulkan currently pointing for DNS? Double check that, because for the registration process, you're going to want to have it pointing to 10.1.1.20. Okay, so it wasn't that. I was hoping maybe it was an easy thing. So then once we do that, we're going to hit apply. Because now what our Vulkan is going to do is that if it has a DNS query, it's going to go and talk to Mars and ask Mars, do you know where this server is? Before it was going out and talking to CTurtle, which is the campus DNS server. Okay, so we changed that. And then just because it's Linux, we changed the config state, and I want to change the running state. So I turned off and turned on the NIC. That just pushes it to the running state. So now we know that's been changed. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is ping trantor.local, and it should be able to find trantor.local. Okay, we're pinging, so it actually can find it. It's doing DNS resolution properly. So one other thing that we're going to want to do in DNS before we get started, and this is one of those things that's not in the documentation, but it's going to make your life much, much easier. So we're going to go back to Mars. And we're going to go into our DNS management. So we're going to go to Server Manager, Tools, DNS. We're going to go into Mars. And we have two things we're going to need to do. First thing we're going to need to do is we need a reverse lookup zone. Because in DNS, by default, it'll set up a forward lookup zone. It will not set up a reverse lookup zone. And by reverse lookup zone, what it means is that if you put in an IP address or a DNS name, it will give you the opposite if you have both. Otherwise, you can only look it up from IP address to DNS name. You can't go from DNS name to IP address. So to set up a reverse lookup zone, click on reverse lookup zone, right click, new zone, next, primary zone, next, next, next. Network ID is going to be the first 3 octets of our range, 192.168.79. Okay, so how I got here. So we're in Server Manager. Then we go to Tools, DNS. In DNS, it'll come up and look like that initially. You'll have DNS and then your server name. And then you expand Mars. And then you'll have forward lookup zone, reverse lookup zone, trust points, and conditional forwarders. Right click on reverse lookup zones, new zone, next, primary zone is default, next, 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 then the first 3 octets. So it's 192.168.79, next, next, finish. Okay, so one of the things that we have is we already have a server we've joined to the domain, and we've just now set up a reverse lookup zone. So that server is not going to show up in our reverse lookup zones. So what we have to do is go into our forward lookup zone, go into Trantor, and we're going to see Jupiter and Mars here. So what we have to do is we go right click on Mars, go to Properties. And this is the weirdest Windows thing that it's another one of those Windows things. It does not make sense, but this is the process. So just trust me on this. So for Mars, all we have to do is say update the associated PTR record, click on Apply, and click on OK. Then if we go to the reverse lookup zone and do a refresh, we now have a pointer for Mars. But we do not have a pointer for Jupiter. So if we right click on Jupiter and go to Properties, it has that checkbox there, but it didn't actually push the record over. So in order to get the record pushed over, what we have to do is deselect it, select Apply, select it again, select Apply, then select OK. Then if we go over here and we do a refresh, it actually brings the record across.
If you do that again, I got
Yeah. This is one of those really weird, funky things in Windows. The thing is, for all the stuff we're doing with SQL, reverse lookup zones are going to be something that you absolutely positively need to make sure is there. So for Trantor, what we did is for the first, to bring Mars across, we right-clicked on Mars, bunch of properties. And what we did is we selected the update associated PTR record checkbox. What that does is that says any new server that's generated on this server will automatically generate a reverse lookup entry for it. So anything created from now on gets a reverse lookup entry by default. This server, because that's the first one we clicked it on, it will get a record. But what happened is Jupyter was already there. It's legacy, it's not included in that. So we have to go into Jupyter, go to properties. It has the checkbox, but it actually didn't do anything to it. So what we need to do is deselect the checkbox, select apply, select the checkbox, select apply, and then OK. It's a weird Windows thing. It's just, if we would have set up a reverse lookup zone right after we built Mars and then joined Jupyter, we would have been fine. But because we did it after the fact, we had to bring that legacy one back in. So now we have a reverse lookup zone that includes both Mars and Jupyter. So now the other thing we have to add in is Vulkan is a Linux server. Linux servers, we don't join the domain in a normal process, so it's not going to add a DNS record for Vulkan. So we have to manually add a DNS record for Vulkan. So we'll go back to our forward lookup zone. We will go right click on it. We're going to say a new host, a record.
Can you get to that screen again?
Okay, so under forward lookup zone,
Okay,
right click on trantor.local,
got it.
new host, a record. It's going to be Vulkan. And then the IP address for Vulkan, which is 192.168.79.50. 168.79.50. And then we want to make sure that the checkbox create associated pointer record or PTR record is selected, which it should be now by default. That creates the reverse lookup record for Vulkan. Add the host. And then it'll say it was created successfully. We can select done. And then we can go into reverse lookup, do a refresh. And we now should see that Mars, Jupyter, and Vulkan all show up in there. So this step, before you do anything more, is really important because some of the stuff that we're going to be doing requires this entry to exist. If the DNS record doesn't exist, some of the next commands that you try running are going to fail. And they're going to fail in weird ways and you won't know why. So DNS, really, really important to get this set up right at the beginning of this lab. And that's one of those not documented in the lab sort of things that I don't know if you did reverse lookup last semester.
We did not.
Normally, when I teach the class last semester, we do it a lot. And actually, it's part of the final because reverse lookup is one of those really important things when you're doing certain services in the Windows realm to make sure that those actually work.
If we didn't touch that at all.
Okay, so now that we have that, now next we're going to go back to our Vulkan server. And I actually need to change my power management to make this a little better. And let me just settings. Okay, I just changed power on my Linux box also because it was timing out way too quick. Default's 5 minutes on a Linux server. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to do a script. And so we're going to do sudo. And we're going to use our wonderful text editor VI. And then we're going to basically take one file and throw it to another. One of the things we're going to have to look on this is before we do it, we need to know what the name of our network NIC is. So if we go up top, we go to our wire connections, and we go down to networking, go to the config. What we need to do is find out what our NIC is actually called. So we need the identity. and you need ENS 192 is what happens to be I have in the script, but you just want to verify that yours is actually using ENS 192. If your virtual machine isn't using ENS 192, then you need to use the name that is associated here under identity. We should all pretty much be the same, but just in case, that's how you double check it. Okay, so what we're doing is we're taking the configuration for our network and we're doing some changes to it.
Exit out of the I again.
In the edit mode or exit out of VI itself?
Exit out of VI.
So it's
command that you had.
Q exclamation point. Or it's :Q exclamation point.
I did not do anything. Both of those.
It's one I do it without thinking, so I would. Yeah. So I believe it's.
Yes, I need to change mine to 30.
Yeah. So it's :Q exclamation point if you've done a change, :W if you need to write, then quit, and then exclamation point. You could just do a Q if you haven't touched anything. But if you touch things, okay. So they're going into Etsy. Sysconfig. Network. Scripts.
And then what's what state it as well in QA? W.
W first, because write.
Wait, and then quit.
And then quit, and then exclamation point.
Got it.
Because that overwrites the existing one. So we're doing network-scripts, ifconfig, ifcfg. ENS, which is the name of our NIC. So VI Etsy sysconfig network-scripts ifconfig-ENS 192. Okay, so that pulls it up. And then what we want to do is we are going to, in the file, we want to add our Active Directory server name. So we need to add that in. And so what we're going to be doing is we want to add in search trantor.local and name server 192.168.79.100. So we're going to add two different things in here. So we want to go into insert mode. And then we'll do it down at the end. Oops, come on. Okay, so we want to put search trantor local.
And this is not in the lab sheets.
No, this is.
It's mine has different commands that it wants us to run. Or is this telling us to?
So it's actually a little bit out of order. So what we're doing is the right above the screenshot part, it shows the two things that need to be added in. It's 1S2. So on page 2.
Page 2 once.
So right above it, it says search trantor.local and name server 192.168.79.100. See that? Let's see if we can put it in.
Yeah.
So this is what we're adding into. So we're in VI, we're going at the end of it. We're just adding those two lines. And then also the pure DNS. The other piece we're putting. So we have here DNS equals, so no search equals, and then and DNS1 we already have set, so we don't have to redo that when we did that in the network settings. So here we have DNS1. We did change that in the network settings, so we don't have to add that. Pure DNS equals no. And then search transfer.local. So we need to have those 3 lines existing in our file. Once we have those in, we hit escape to get out of edit mode. And then it's column or mouse in the right place. So colon right, so W, Q, and then exclamation point. Okay, so that edited our file. So now our file has been edited, but we need to restart the networking service because we changed our config state, but we didn't change our running state. And so when we're talking about stuff in Linux, a lot of times we have config state, running state, because again, Linux is based on text files. SQL is the same way. So when we get into SQL, we're going to have running state and config state that we're going to be working with also. So this is going to be an important thing to remember, that most anytime you do a change, you need to do something to apply that change after you make the change. And so now we've made a change to the file, but how the system is running is not with that particular state. So the next line that we do is actually going to turn the network on and off again. Or if you happen to be in the GUI, you could do it the other way, where you could actually go into the network setting and it'll do the same thing that steps 4 would do as well. So you just go in and turn off and turn on your NIC that way. That would do the exact same thing. So we're accomplishing it either from the command line by going nm CLI, so network CLI, network off, semicolon, and then nm CLI, network on. And so all that is doing is turning it off again. And it would help if I could type. Okay, so all that did was the same thing as turning it off and on again to apply that config state to the running state. And then the last thing we're doing is a cat etc, and we're going to cat the file to actually make sure that what we had typed in there actually took. And then that's what you're doing your screenshot of. And so that's coming back and saying what the search and the name servers are associated with that server. So that was the easy part. So now we have everything in a happy state. Networking is working. Our configurations are working. Our Linux server knows about our domain controller. DNS is talking to the domain. It has an entry in the domain. So now what we need to do is we need to join it to the Active Directory domain. So to do that, we're going to first install this next step, which is going to actually do Kerbros on there, because Windows is doing Kerbros. So we're going to do sudo yum install realmd pod job -mk home directory. Kerbros 5 workstation. Okay, so Windows is using Kerbros 5. Most Linux servers by default don't have Kerbros on there. And it looks like I did a typo. And yep, I added an extra D. Oh, I had one less S. And a third time. So there's 3 S's and 1 D. And then it's going to come up and give you a couple prompts saying, are you sure you want to install this? Okay, so Kerbros is now installed. Next thing up is we need to do a realm join now that we have Kerbros. So what we're doing here is we're joining Vulkan to the Active Directory network. So we're doing a sudo realm join grantor .local minus capital U, and in single quotes, lowercase administrator at uppercase trantor .local. Single quote, space, minus lowercase v. And then it's going to ask for the administrator. This is where it's similar to when we were joining Jupyter to the network, where it says, okay, what's the password for administrator on the network? So what's Mars's password? This is our password 01. Okay, and sending net login. Let's see what we got. Couldn't connect. Get Kerbros ticket for administrator.local.
Fine, worked.
Failed to join the domain. Okay, so what we may have going on is the time on my server is 4:36 and the time on Mars is proper time. So what it is my Vulkan has the wrong time. Kerbros only allows you to connect if you're plus or minus 5 minutes. So need to fix my time. And then try. Same time zone. Okay, well, I'll circle around and see if we can get that fixed. I think we're going to stop at this point until we get everybody so that theirs are connected to the realm that we can. Okay.
Oh, that's not cool.
Yeah, the lab can go pretty fast if everything plays nice. If things go squirrely, that's where it gets ugly.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I saw that approximately 200 minutes. I'm just like, what?
Yep.
And I'm already like 3 pages away from being done.
Okay, why is my time being weird?
That's not good.
Okay, so 10, 6, 30th. Okay, so that is all good. And then we can get to automatic. Should be good. Now let's try rejoining the domain. Okay, Kerbros share. Yes, let's just do. I have a carrot in there. Oh, thank you. Classic typo. That definitely would cause a problem. Oh, I know. I put the wrong password in for that.
Come on, Julie.
That looks better.
That looks like it worked.
Yeah, that looks a whole lot better. Okay, it would help if I'm actually entering the proper password. Okay. Let's see what we got going on back here, and then let's see if we can get your red hat to play next too. Okay. So on your time on yours is 30 and 38 with forward Mars. Okay, and yours is full of the red hat page. This is what the time. And one. Yes. I have. Mars server set up the controller. I guess I can even reverse stuff right now. And I just haven't had any issues with that you will show me how to do it. What I can't do is copy and paste. Can't copy and paste will not want me to copy and paste. You can't copy and paste anyway, just remove it. Then you have to go and edit it and make sure. I just find it's easier just to type that's. Like this, we also. I found that. On fire extension of the network, that's negatives completely gone. Okay, here it says disappeared. Face there. Lovely. So now I have no wired connection, which means no internet. Which means I can't reinstall the SQL. Lovely. So, hey, you know what though? I believe in you. I believe in you. Don't give up like I did. Giving up, that's fine. Yeah, if this was the last of you know, this might be. Good, Ian. That's it, he's trying to install this. I stayed just the finish, so I have. It's like, you know what, I have one page of waste that they use Lab2. Good, Ian. Yeah. He's like, I mean, I'm pretty fond of like, I think honestly, I'm gonna probably finish just like practice. Finished, but it's really. Probably by the end of Tom's class, I think people. Not before now, not before, but like midway through real complex. And plus there's that 30 minutes. Oh, I guess. Yeah, it's still 2 hours. This one's still 40 minutes. Okay. Good, I'm doing. First time. My goal is to get first time done because I don't know. Yeah, listen, I know. It is what we're half of the lab completed already. Yeah. No, read that stuff. That's, you know what, that. My goal is just to have this lab, wait, what, this will be like DoorDash, you may not have to worry. But. That's all the thing. That's the height. Like, so. 15, it's 15-mile driveway, pretty far driveway. Yeah, that's a part of that for DoorDash. Yeah, 15.
was literally a tiny thing, I do like, paid like $40 per book, right? $30. Jesus. That's really good. I'm like, and I'm just like, I had $20 already, 30, and it was like, I think I paid out $32, like 50 cents or something like that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm hungry. But. Like, it was like a night, I'm like, and I'm like, and I just like, I had to put up my phone, like, this was most of that 7.1. Like, most of what this different one, that's like. That was nice house. It was a. Down. Maybe just really appreciate it. You know what? Maybe they do. And you know what? I appreciate that. Because you know what? I didn't.
Thought it was, but I
I didn't order with a no tip.
we reinstall.
Because I declined so many orders. I'm like, okay, I need to accept it. But I accepted it. It was really real.
You don't decline, you just let them kind of roll.
Yeah, when we did the edit, we also put in
Press
the
decline,
just
the other
the
line, like, yeah, every time you get to the nine, you kind of have some.
So it doesn't affect my,
It doesn't affect your stuff, yes.
That's good to know. It's because I know, okay, so I'm not driving 13 miles for 14,
Or like.
and go to.
it was $4. No, the, my real problem is
Your Nick
my
might
dollar
get
per
the
mile I drive.
and go into the thing.
It needs to be at least $1 per mile.
It's just really weird.
More is
So, you're
good.
looking at S32, so what you need to do.
They
is
change
come to, you
$1
know,
per month.
needs to be, you know, 30.
I'm not doing anything that's.
And then go.
And then we just got one to drive across town.
And that's why it was,
$2.
I walked through that, is because most people are the same, but not everybody, because it's randomized. and stuff.
12 miles in my driving, $2. I'm like, nah, I'm good.
Okay, so we need to figure out why you're parking for them. So let's just. Oh. Go clean or something. Because what it is that
What's up?
they do
Brain zero
rail
rail
thing. Sometimes it's as simple as that there's a couple of development.
in Minnesota,
And there's a couple different.
and it was giving ethanol and it is.
They're so far.
Where it means, way more.
That's the thing, yeah.
But it says that it's like. Yesterday. The next week.
Yeah. Wi-Fi networks. Just on top and on.
You connect. Access.
Yeah, there's no other option for us. There's no other option for us to go like,
Here's the DCT.
Right there.
how do you connect that up? No, it's password.
That's someone we had to connect to.
I might have always been connected to it and they haven't told us good. Oh, I know what this is. I got my cat in Wilmore and it's by Wilmore. You will do that. And then we gave you the fast. Great. Password to the username as well. Something that did work. So it's password for username and password. I just think I'm leaving it blank in my password and blank. This DC, so that this one should work.
Yeah, you're doing everything right. That's the thing this is a red hat side issue that we're trying to get back to figure out why it is.
I just have to
It's generating the right description to your
That's
account.
right.
And of course, you can't get any farther. So you can play nice.
Enough for trade delays and no killing it.
Okay, so here we show them.
We.
And where you can click on this to like manually attach.
Yeah, what's up with us? When you know what I mean?
Show up. Yeah.
Right,
We have Ohio, wait, weeks straight. Now we have one in Minnesota and North Dakota. We just need to stop trains apparently. And we just, we need to train our conductors better because there's too many derailments.
Okay. It's gonna sound really weird, but set up, you have probably one email account. Set up another developer account. And then you look at your subscription. Okay, that's gonna be the fastest way, because otherwise you could just open and take it with Red Hat and particularly. Okay, so that'll work better. There's my name now. Okay, so anybody else have a problem getting theirs enrolled in the realm?
Not enroll on just I can see.
So you're doing which part? Oh, you're still trying to get your SQL Server to talk to it. Okay, so.
And I went to like.
Okay, click OK, let's see what your.
Like.
Oh, it's SA for the log.
Oh, it's just SA.
Yeah, so it's system administrator, but SQL Server is always gonna be SA.
Oh, okay, I thought it was the login for.
No. Yeah, so that's what SQL is really.
I think it's.
Yeah, and the problem
For
that,
example, the default SA.
yeah, and the problem is people see SA, they don't think that's a user ID, because they're going, they think gas station.
Yeah.
But in SQL land, SA is the God account.
Yeah, here's the login.
Yeah, it won't let me connect to the.
Okay,
The password of the.
so the user ID, that's the student, so slash capital STUD3NT. Oh, yeah, fighting, it's a backslash, not
Yeah.
yeah. Exactly. That's where it's being. Okay, so moving forward. And is yours in a happy place or were you,
I rebuilt my Vulcan too.
and it's like nice now? Or you're still rebuilding?
I started this build though.
Okay,
Yeah, my entire net, like the wired network, just disappeared. So I couldn't
Oh.
clean it. And
Oh.
there was no like header for it or add a wired connection or.
it sounds like rebuilding was probably a good idea at that point, something was really swirly.
I don't know what happened.
He's telling my kids a lot of similar situation that I had last semester, and I think he's on my old bond.
No.
It's literally just the red hat, like the Linux server.
Okay.
Everything else is working, so I set up the domain.
So on the next step, immediately after this, I'm having issues.
Okay, so we joined the realm, which was step 2. The next step, what we're going to do is once we got successfully joined and you could type like I was having problems typing, is now we're going to go and we want to do some mappings to actually verify that we can query Active Directory to get stuff. And that's what these next steps are doing, is we're doing a query of Active Directory to see if we can actually bring some information across. And this is where it gets a little weird. So that might be what you were running into. So what we want to do is, and
The same type in the commands, and mine just does not work.
so we're going to do, let me just, so it's kinit.
Oh, you don't want us to do ID administrator?
Well, we're going to. So you have to read the instructions above it, not just what's in the prompt. So we're going to verify that we can gather information from the domain. We're going to acquire Kerbros ticket for a user. And in the example, we're going to use kinit and klist commands. So first we're going to go kinit, which I should have had kinit on there. Okay. Da-da-da. Where'd it go? So we went kinit. Oops. Space ID administrator at transfer.local. Okay. Community route. Okay, so that part, I'm actually not going to worry about needing to do that because that was more of a, we're just doing a query, but we aren't needing to do that to proceed further. So I'm going to just skip that step for now. And
Yeah, you're having the same issues that I would have.
yeah, and rather than troubleshoot that, just for sake of time, I want to do it to actually get the connection part. So we're going to jump over to Mars. And we're going to go to PowerShell. The other thing that you have to watch out for is there's a couple of things that we do in PowerShell, but there is one that we actually go to a command prompt for. So the first thing that we're doing on Mars is that we want to import module Active Directory.
So is a screenshot related to that step?
So it's the host one that has the screenshot.
Yeah. Is that what we're about to do?
No, I actually skipped. Let me just do the one that has the screenshot. All that is just a host command because you want to make sure it can actually do a reverse lookup. And then it's just going to come back and actually give what Active Directory has for the server. And that's what your screenshot is. Okay.
I thought I just wanted to make sure.
Yep, good call, because I should have pointed that out. Okay, so then we're going to over to Mars. We're importing into PowerShell the Active Directory module.
And then for this PowerShell apps or not?
For the Active Directory, it's not going to be case sensitive. If there's places where it's case sensitive, I'll usually tell you. There are going to be a couple places. It's usually going to be when we're on the Linux box that case is going to be an issue. On Windows, usually case is not an issue. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're actually going to create a user using PowerShell. So we're going to do new AD user. And the user we're creating is MS SQL. And we're assigning a password. Read dash host as a secure string. CC. Yeah, so we're actually entering the password here. And so I was trying to remember if it's enter password or, but it's actually we insert our password. And password never expires. True, enable. And true again. So we're saying that the password never expires, the password is enabled, and we're setting the initial password. So I was wrong, and it was that we were supposed to just put the enter password there, and then it gives you a prompt for the password. Ooh, didn't like it. Yeah.
So for this stuff, I'm gonna do you copy and paste instead, just for it.
Yeah. I think, yes. You are correct. Ha. Okay.
I know I am.
So it's more copy and pasting doesn't really work on the Linux side, but it does work on the Windows Server side.
That's
So,
exactly what I just found out.
so just a heads up on that. That makes life a little easier on these to make sure you get the syntax right.
Yeah.
So
Copy and paste does not work on Linux, but it does work on the Windows machine.
okay, so we're still on the DC. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set the SPN for that account that we just created. And then we're going to set the one for the port. We're going to do a second one. Whoa, what did that do? It's weird. Mouse is doing weird things. Okay, so the service principal name was registered. So now we're set up well there. Okay, then the next piece is one of those weird ones that it's under configure AD encryption support. So this is going back over to Vulkan, but I didn't actually label it really well in there to jump back to Vulkan. So sorry about that. So this is the update dash crypto.
So we have to do this next part.
Yep.
It says to do it at root host. We're doing.
Oh, yeah. So sorry, we needed SU first. Good catch.
Actually doing something.
You're actually catching stuff too.
Just brought me back to.
Oh, I know why.
Why
I set a different password for the two.
I'm typing in my password and it's.
Password 01 exclamation point is what you should have used when you set up your root password on Linux.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've been typing in my.
Yep. That's what I was doing too.
No, it still said failed.
So capital password 01 exclamation point, because that was the one that we had you guys set for root. Because the SU to root, you need to have the
There
root
you go.
password.
I must have forgot the exclamation point or
Yep.
something.
Okay, so now we can update the crypto policies. We want to set default AD support. Kevin, were you able to get yours to register with the new account?
I did, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Sometimes you just take a totally different tack and it just solves the problem, and you don't know what the root cause was, but here's a solution to actually get it.
It's like program.
Yeah,
Programming 50% of the time you don't know why your code works. 50% of the time you don't know why it isn't working.
okay, so that switches our encryption policy, but then when you change encryption policy, we actually have to restart. It's one of the rare things in Linux, you have to do a restart, so we need to restart our server.
So after it says before we take, oh yeah, we start the system before we take place. I just need to open my eyes. Oh. Sorry.
Oh, we're rocking through this pretty well. How's everybody else doing on their labs?
Put up that apart, but I don't think you're there yet.
Yeah, where are you stuck?
Like, there's my work.
Yep.
Oh. They get the subscription, but not the source.
Okay. So if you click on it, there's one. Click done and you should just doesn't have to. It's the server network. Speaking of. Yeah. What are the installation destination? Okay. Software selection. Okay. Yeah, we're solving the C. We're doing a live stream. Yeah. All right, how are you guys doing? Good, okay.
Okay, so.
There's-
So. Logging back in.
was asking for the password for SQL at Tranquil, would that be password 01 or?
Yeah, because we set it to password 01. So we're doing init MS SQL. So what we're doing is we're querying Active Directory to look up that particular account. Okay, and then NVO. Maybe I know it would help. Okay, so the big thing that we want to do in this part that we're looking for is we're looking for this number that comes up when we do the KVNO search. And in our case, the KVNO number was 2 in my case. It may be 2 in yours, it may be a higher number, but that's the number that we're going to need for the next step. And then lastly, KVNO, MSSQL, service, open.
And then that command also gives you the number 2.
Yep.
I just want to make sure I was supposed to get back. Almost.
And I do wrong. MS,
And then
SQL,
it says on the Windows
SVC.
machine command prompt.
Yeah.
PowerShell on Mars. Is what you want.
Hang on, I'm not quite there yet. You're actually ahead of where I'm at.
Don't worry about it. All I have to do is DoorDash nice.
What are you doing DoorDash now for?
What?
When did you switch to DoorDash? I thought you were over at
I started failing classes, and I could just decide when I work and when I don't work, and I can focus on school.
ah,
You feel what I'm saying?
yep. Ah. I did a typo there.
Yeah, you forgot dots to put the.
For some reason, my keyboard is being weird. Yeah, I was doing greater than symbols instead of periods, but I wasn't catching it.
Back with Pac-Man.
Okay. KVNO. KVNO, MS SQL, SVC, /Vulkan. Oh, I have an extra space.
What you forget today, you do need a 10.
Yep.
Hey, we're installing the Microsoft SQL server onto the Linux machine.
Yes, we are. Break your brain.
Why would you do that?
Because it actually works better than it does on Windows, and when we install it next week on Windows, you will know why.
I
Because
think
Windows,
entirely.
Windows suck. Windows.
Okay.
Just fuck.
Well, what it is Microsoft finally, when they had the change of the old guard, embraced Linux. Before that, Microsoft was actually actively trying to kill Linux. And when they did that, their flagship product, one of their flagship products, SQL, runs really well on top of Linux.
Yeah.
And so that is now something that they actually marketed as a product, and it's a really cool product. Yeah. What you got, Trent?
You just know what? I still doesn't work. These have entire rebuild. Wait, no.
Dude, that's just hold up.
It's a, no, it's IP show. And then I can help. IP show. Insert Davis. Yeah, address, okay, what that's meaning is that like, geez, stuff to get on my address. The two steps you need to be PowerShell, where you get the service records. That's what, yeah. That's what we're doing is we're right up. Oh, IP address. They kind of an eye on this next that commando.
Especially with like system.
They're gonna keep me playing up to live. Okay, so. This is your main.
Just don't see what I did, because what I did, only issue, try and find what happens based on those. And then we run them. And then, you know, I don't want to choice. And what it is when it's querying active directory, it's not my choice service.
Okay. Do I have to do
Just the setup, I found your issue. Yeah, going along with it, it's supposed to be.
I'm making some mistakes.
Yep, what do you got?
I'm not taking some trust.
That's not the 9.1.
It's asking.
Yeah, SQL's not certified on the again.
This would be bad.
Okay. It was a figured issue.
Yeah.
Hey, I fixed this issue.
You did.
I just saw that sign up with my date, so I'll do it.
Yeah, you were going, I want to use the latest and greatest, but unfortunately, I hadn't tested SQL on 9 yet. It's not certified by Microsoft, and now we know it doesn't work on 9.
Now we're on. Oh, it's not.
Yeah, basically, I feel like an idiot. Wasted 5-ish hours of going at 5 times.
That's okay.
Hey.
It is-
Are we
See, the thing is, though, you're here and somebody was able to help figure that out, rather than banging your head against the wall all weekend and then coming in Monday and going, no.
Like, Alicia didn't do what I did. You like, after the first time it just
Yeah.
not working, give up and.
Okay. So, okay, so then you didn't have any typos. So why is yours being cranky?
It's gonna just. And we should use it, you know. Hopefully an accurate users, but still doesn't work. And if it's kind of fancy, still doesn't work. Then we will. If it still doesn't work, I'm sorry. Games. Users there. That kind of weird things. I hope my solution makes out to you. I'm speaking about the next. Join the realm, that you're doing this. So let's go back to also music meetings. Well, literally. Magic spelling. Those two words, it was on my table, right? I was doing some cold water. Okay, I was just sitting here. It was not looked at either. I just hear. Couple of sizzles. Yeah, I hear a couple of sizzles.
About 1.5 seconds later, okay, first immediate reach funny photo. This thing was exploding, you know, like the Note 7s were like battery. So I'm like, pick it up and like, I start like feeling it, so it's like claw, like I'm ready to like chuck it across the room or something. It's, you know, and it's like, no, it's not gonna be fun. And then it hits me. Magic smoke smile.
Oh, yeah.
Right under the exact.
No, this is my foot, like, so, you know,
When I.
It's the typos that always come back. It's always just annoying.
Okay. Moving forward quickly.
Apparently, as soon as I woke up, I whipped my, yeah.
Okay, so for the next 3 commands, there is a part in there where you have to insert the number that you got when you ran this previous
Yeah.
command, which was the 2.
They also do it on the Windows machine command line.
Mine's almost in.
Do you want us to do PowerShell or do you want us to do it in PSC?
I believe it can be done in either. Let me try doing it in PowerShell and see how it goes.
So.
You understand why I was most confused?
No, well, I haven't done this in just long enough that I'm going, it should work, but there may be a reason why I said that. And so I'm just gonna have Notepad open so I can do the edit. And I needed to put the number in there.
Yeah, basically the only way to,
Okay, so that one worked. It's pretty much anything you can do in oops. Edit, paste.
Yeah, I got an A when I did it.
When you put your hang on. Okay, you need to replace the carrots and the number symbol
Oh,
with the
okay,
2.
The numbers?
Yeah.
Got it. I thought it was just the number sign. My bad.
No, that's okay. That's
Let you copy or erase it.
in Windows, yes. What you have to do is do the edit and paste up here.
Well, like it did, but it pasted it and then it like tried to take like the first part and enter it, and then like it didn't do it all as one, it entered it.
So what I'm doing is I'm bringing it into Notepad first on the domain controller, pasting it into that using the edit paste function. Then there I'm editing the KVNO number, changing that to 2, and then taking that and copying that or pasting that in to run it. And that's been playing nice. So it's sort of a different process, but that seems to be one, if you do need to do an edit, that having a WordPad or Notepad open is sort of handy. So edit, paste, change your KVNO number to 2. Copy that. And then we can do paste in for that one. Yeah. Yeah, it's,
I'm still trying to like paste it. It's like.
okay. My PowerShell is being cranky on me. Hang it. So what we're doing in this last one is we're actually generating a encryption key. And then we're gonna grab that key and move it over to our. Oh, being weird. Okay, my first two commands work great, and the last one is being all cranky.
But the last one worked for me, and so.
All of these are in.
You bounce back and forth, you have to be careful in the labs, because we're gonna be going back and forth between the two.
The lab one, it's just.
No, lab 2. Because this is all in lab 2 that we're
Got it.
doing the demos on. Lab 1 is pretty much all gonna be on Linux. There we go.
That's fine. I can,
Okay.
So, that's great. Did you get it or you still?
No, I guess you got it. Just like do the.
Yeah, it's a weird, because what you have to do is it's big enough, you have to copy it and then right click into it, and then it'll want to drop it in. Yeah, if you're already there. Because what we just did is we generated an encryption key, and then we're gonna grab that key and actually bring it over to the server. And so the next section, what that is that you actually do a CIFS, you install CIFS, you do a mount. You move the key over.
So, okay, so after that, it says execute the above command, you should have a tab file name, msq.tcap found in the directory, you're currently in, okay?
Yep, so here we're in the users administrator directory. So if you go to your file explorer
So files,
and then you go to this PC. And then you go local directory, users, and then administrator. And then you'll see the MS key tab file right here.
okay, and you want us to copy it, the file, and move it to a new directory?
So what you're gonna be doing is you're gonna be moving that over to Vulkan. But how to move it over to Vulkan is gonna be a complicated process, because what you have to do is you have to set up a CIFS share and then do the movement across.
So copy the file to a new directory, c/temp.
Yep, so copy it. In the root of your drive, make a folder, new folder, temp. Paste it in there. So our key tab file is there. And then we jump over back to the Linux server. And then what we're gonna have to do is install CIFS, because we're running out of time. So I'm gonna just talk through what happens next. Is you're gonna go to the Linux server, you're gonna install CIFS so that you can now mount a Windows share.
Mhm.
Then you're gonna mount the share where this particular file is found, and you're gonna bring it back over to the server.
And is that pretty cookbooks from now?
Yeah, it's pretty much the harder part. The big hard commands we just did.
Alright.
And as long as those commands work, the rest of it should go really smoothly.
Alright.
Yeah.
So everything that I need to do is in here for me to just do?
Yep.
Oh, perfect, I'm gonna get this done like in 20 minutes.
Okay. So I am gonna leave you guys at that point. You should be in a pretty good spot. Anybody have a question before I disappear? Again,
Yes,
yeah.
attendance code.
Oh, attendance code. You guys want an attendance code? That probably would be a good idea.
I don't have to go punch it down again looking for it.
Yep. Okay, attendance code for the day. JBL exceed.
1 second, we'll all get it. JBL. The fact that I'm gonna have both labs done,
Doesn't that feel like an accomplishment?
it does.
enter yes.
Because, you know, I didn't turn in a single lab on time last.
Yes, I know that.
And I'm gonna about to have 2 on the first week.
Yes, you see, you're starting on the right foot.
I just need to ace everything.
Got it?
I,
Okay.
if you literally mulch me off with 1 point, I cannot graduate. I have to get 100% on every